Hey everybody, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Janice and you are in for a treat today because we're going to make black and white cookies. I have been craving black and white cookies and I was going to order them from Instacart, and my husband said, why don't you just make some? So I went to my favorite website, which is Sally's Baking Addiction. Shout out to Sally. Thanks for all the great recipes. And voila, I have actually everything I need right here in my cupboards and in my kitchen, in my refrigerator. And also I have some baking stuff down in the basement. So I'll see you in a few minutes. I'm going to gather all my ingredients and we'll be back when I've got it all together. Thanks. Friends, here we are back in Janice's kitchen. I've assembled all the ingredients we need for our black and white cookies. So today we're going to need all-purpose flour. We're going to need regular granulated sugar, a little bit of salt, some baking soda, baking powder. Don't confuse your baking soda and your baking powder. This is baking soda. And the recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I find in my recipes I like to use a combination of 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1 of almond. It just gives it a little bit more richness. You also want to assemble your tools that you're going to need: measuring cups, measuring spoons, spatulas, and also I find a baking scale to be very handy. These are not expensive, but when a recipe provides you with both cups and grams or ounces, it's really interesting how you can see the differences between what we think is a cup and a quarter might be actually more grams or less grams than the recipe calls for. So using the metric measurements is really much more accurate for baking, which is why that's what the professionals use. All right, come on over to the mixing station. So I do have this beautiful KitchenAid stand mixer, but this is a small recipe, which is the other reason I wanted to make this one, because I don't want a ton of cookies laying around the house. This is a small batch recipe. So using the KitchenAid mixer when you're doing a small batch, it's hard to get the butter and the sugar to cream together. So our other ingredients that we'll need are butter. So I'm going to put that right here in my bowl. And I've got my little handheld Hamilton Beach. How many of you have a Hamilton Beach? Probably many of you. Maybe it was handed down by your mother or your grandmother. They've been around for quite some time. All right, so there's 10 tablespoons of butter, unsalted. And here we have the sugar, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. And we're going to mix all of that. We whisk that together, and now we're going to combine the butter and the sugar. And we're going to mix that, starting on low, just to get everything loosened up. And as it starts mixing together, you can turn the bowl. That's the other reason I like to use this rather than the KitchenAid, is I can control more easily how these get combined and scraping the bowl. All right, so I'm going to work on this until it's well combined, and I'll be back in just a second. So I've mixed this for about 2 minutes on medium, and you want to do that, beat it until it's smooth and creamy, which this is, as you can see. And then we're going to add in our egg, 1 egg at room temperature. You always want your egg at room temperature, and your butter softened. And then I'm going to add the vanilla and almond extract. And we're just going to mix that up into a nice smooth batter. Like yellow cake batter, only thicker, which it basically is. All right, so now that we have all that combined, what we're going to do now is add in the dry ingredients, which is our all-purpose flour and the leavening agents. including the salt, and our substitute for sour cream. The recipe calls for sour cream. I generally like to use low-fat, plain Greek yogurt to replace the sour cream because it's yummy, it has that tang, and it's I have high cholesterol, so this is a very good substitute if you're dealing with that particular malady. All right, so let's get to work here. You want to do this in 3 batches. So I'm going to dump about 1/3 of this in. Turn that off while I drop that in so the flour doesn't go everywhere. All right, got that mixed in. Now I'm going to put in a little bit of the sour cream. This is 1/3 cup Greek yogurt. So about 1/3 of that. And then mix it together again. So you get everything well blended. And then now we're going to put in another 1/3 of the flour mixture. Add the sour cream. Second installment. Batter is really coming together nicely. It is supposed to be, it is a thick batter. It's going to give us nice, puffy, black and white, cake-like cookies. All right. Now the last 1/3. Here we go. So it's nice to use your little bowls and containers for your ingredients. That way you have everything pre-measured and it can all go in the sink, rinsed, and then into the dishwasher. So you have a nice clean workspace. All right, flour's in. This is the 3rd and last mix. I do have my oven preheating to 350, and also if you're like me, I sometimes store pans and things in the oven. It's always a good idea to check your oven as you're preheating so that if there are things in there, you get them out before they're too hot to handle. Okay, there's our last dollop of Greek yogurt. And I'm just going to give this a zhuzh around the sides of the bowl before I mix to get all that flour that's stuck to the sides and the bottom. Make sure that gets all incorporated. And usually have just a flat butter knife handy to scrape things down. So it works especially good on the beaters. Okay, here we go. Since this is the final mix, you want to just make sure everything's incorporated. But you don't want to overbeat it. And that's a good way to clean your beaters. Doesn't splatter too much. It does splatter a little. But there you go. There's not that much to take off the beaters now. My mother always said, the more that goes in the bowl, the more that goes in your tummy. How true. Don't want to waste this yummy batter. Okie dokie. So my dear husband is filming this for me, and while I was mixing the batter, I said, baking and talking are 2 of my favorite things. So this is a natural for me. All right, so all the batter's mixed. I've got a 1/4 cup measuring cup, and the instructions are 2 sheet pans with parchment paper, and we want 6 cookies per sheet. So at 1/4 cup, we're going to mound them on each of the sheets, baking sheets, and then they're going to go in the oven for 16 to 18 minutes. So I'll do a couple of these and then I'll come back when they come out of the oven. All right, so that's about a 1/4 cup. I need my little spatula. So we're going to scoop that onto the parchment. And another. You can see that this batter is really thick. Let's do this. Yeah. All right. I won't take up your time watching me load the trays, but they will go in the oven and I'll see you when they come out. So our cookies came out of the oven. I baked them for about 18 minutes. You can see they're nice and brown right around the edges, and also the bottom is beautifully browned. Now, these cookies are a little less domed than I'd like them to be, but I think they'll taste great, but I think they didn't rise as much because I used low-fat or non-fat yogurt instead of full-fat. And fat helps the dough to rise when it bakes. So these are a little flatter, but they're much healthier. All right, I'm going to set up for the frosting and I'll see you in a minute. All right, here we are ready for our frosting. We have 660 grams of confectioner sugar, powdered sugar. When it says sifted, you always want to measure first and then sift, because you're putting air in the confectioner sugar when you sift it. And if you sift it and then measure it, you're going to have twice as much, and it's going to be way too sweet. So just a little hint there. We have 6 tablespoons of milk plus 1 tablespoon set aside. So we're going to make the vanilla and the chocolate in the same batch. We're just going to scoop some of this out and add the cocoa powder to this one to make the chocolate. So for now, I'm going to mix 6 tablespoons of milk, and again I use half a teaspoon of vanilla, half a teaspoon of almond extract, 2 tablespoons of light corn syrup, and if you don't have any of these little handy shot glass measuring glasses, they're really handy. So they are graded in both ounces and teaspoons and tablespoons, so very handy. And finally the salt. Now you don't want to mix this with your mixer because it's going to put too much air in the frosting. So with icing, the challenge is not getting too many bubbles. So we want to mix it nice and slowly, mixing it all together, trying to keep the powdered sugar in the bowl. And whisking. That is very thick. You don't need to record this. Oh. So the frosting was a little too thick, and so I've added a little bit more milk to it, and we'll see if that gets us the right consistency. It's the corn syrup in the icing that's going to give it that nice shine that you want on your black and white cookies. Get this out of the way. So I've added enough extra liquid to make this really nice, a nice consistency for spreading on our cookie. And I'm going to take a cup of this And I'm going to put it in a separate bowl. And this is where we're going to make our chocolate frosting. All right, so that cup, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder and a tablespoon of milk. So I'm going to do just a little bit of that because since I added extra milk to the original batch, neatness doesn't count when you're mixing frosting. So that looks like it's coming together pretty nicely. Remember, you want solid chocolate, not striped, because you really want that contrast of, it's really brown and white, but I suppose if you wanted black and white, you could put a little bit of black food coloring in. But this is the traditional colorway. Okay, so that chocolate frosting looks really good, chocolate icing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to frost half of the cookie with the white, and then we're going to let it set in the refrigerator for 15 minutes, and then we're going to do the black. So you can see I've got some bubbles here. This is the bubbles I was telling you about that you get from mixing. So I want to just pop some of those, just dragging the spatula across the top. And let's see how we go. Take a butter knife and scoop some of this onto my cookie. And we're going to coat half of it. Oh, it spreads nicely. Nice and thick. You want a good thick layer, and this frosting is also going to set up so that it's kind of got that crunch when you bite into it. The outside of the frosting layer gets nice and crisp, so when you bite into it, you get that little crackle. All right, so that's about half of that one, and I'm going to frost up the rest of these, put them in the refrigerator, and I'll see you when we do the other side. All right, so here is our finished product. These beautiful black and white cookies. Look at the shine on that icing. It's just perfect. And of course, you know, there are not many advantages to being a grown-up, right? You got to do all the work, be responsible. But the good news is you can eat whatever you want. And tonight we're having black and white cookies for dinner. And maybe for dessert too. Just what I've been waiting for. Join me in baking. Don't take yourself so seriously. And if you can bake it, don't buy it. See you next time.